So this Saturday/Sunday, it's really the start of what's going to be a great month of boxing. The month of February is absolutely stacked. And we're kicking it off with shows in the UK. We obviously have the show over in the OYO Arena, over in Wembley with Adam Museum. But in America, we have one of the best fights I think that could be made in boxing. It's a really intriguing fight. It's such an interesting fight. It's a fight in which a lot of people, I don't want to say that they see it as one-sided. It's not the right word, but there's an overwhelming favourite in this fight, which is a bit of a strange one to me because this is a genuinely competitive, I'm not going to necessarily call it a proper 50-50, although some people would argue that, but it's a very close fight. 55-45 at the very least, which is David Benavidez versus David Morrell. Now, David Benavidez, let's go over the tail of the tape, brings a record of 29 wins, no defeats, 24 knockouts, 28 years old, 6'2" with a 74-inch reach. Dave Morrell, on the other hand, is only 11-0 with 9 knockouts. He is 27 years old from Cuba, and I believe that he looks about 27, because you never know with Cuban fighters. Some of them, you look at them like, 29, are you? Really? He does look 27, to be fair. Based out of Minnesota, Minneapolis. There are not too many, there are many fighters basing themselves, especially from Cuba, going to Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's quite a very, very cold state. Very cold state. It's not going to be the same as Cuba. But 6'1" with a 78-inch reach, and he is 27 years old. Coming in off the back of it has to be said, fairly unimpressive performance. In fact, actually, both guys really coming into this fight off fairly unimpressive performances. Dave Morrell against Hot Rod Kaladzits, that was on the undercard of Crawford versus Israel Madrimov, and David Benavidez, likewise, against Alexander Vodcek is a better fighter than Kaladzits, but a fighter who'd retired many years ago now, came back and, he hadn't looked quite the same, definitely not in his peak, and that was on the undercard of Tank Davis versus Frank Martin. And it has to be said, neither guy, a lot of people talk about the Dave Morrell performance, and yeah, I get that. Kaladzet did a very good job at really nullifying the offense, and I think with Dave Morrell, although he comes from that Cuban background, very exciting fighter, so he would have been boxing, he would have seen it all in the Cuban amateur system. He is still, as a pro, he's only his 12th fight. You got to remember, this is fight number 30 for Dave Benavidez, so the experience factor goes with Benavidez. Now, the one thing I would say about David Benavidez, we're just talking about his experience, etc., is if you look throughout the course of his career, I remember when he fought that Ronald Gavril guy, he got dropped in that fight, and he only won it via split decision, which I think, in fairness, he really was the clear winner. I don't know how he scored it split, but he was down in that fight. And I really want to say it's kind of like 2019 to 2020. Benavidez went on a bit of I'm going to say he lost his way a little bit. I'm not sure if it was in 2019, because I know in 2020 he fought Alexis Arguello, and he was 170 pounds for that fight. That was his WBC title. It was meant to be on the line. He ended up getting stripped of that. That was at 168 because he missed weight. And I think it was before that as well. He was stripped for failing it wasn't a performance enhancer, let's put it like that. It was, I think, some recreational substance in Dave Benavidez' system. So he went through a bit of a bad patch there, and I knew he was big at 168, but he could have made those weights. And since then, he's fought Lemieux. Lemieux should never have been in the ring with him. Caleb Plant was a decent win. He still has plenty left. Demetrius Andre should never been in the ring with him, to be honest with you. But crucially, if you look at that Demetrius Andre fight, he was able, much faster fighter, coming up through the weights. But he was able to tag Benavidez. He was able to tag Benavidez in that fight. Benavidez didn't think really much of the shots because Andre didn't have the power to really hurt him. But nevertheless, he was still able to tag him. Now, Benavidez is one of these fighters where he has very good punching power, obviously. 24 knockout wins in his 29 professional wins. But he's more a guy who's going to break you down with size and volume. He will chip away at you until you eventually succumb to the punishment. Dave Morrell is a much more destructive puncher, in my opinion. In my opinion, Dave Morrell is the bigger puncher of these two. If you'd seen his fight, I believe it was the fight before Kaladzits. I think it was that Sianik Beko guy. I mean, that was devastating, absolutely devastating. He really flattened him. He flattened this other guy as well, Yamagichi Falcao. It might actually been, it was one of these fights where Morrell left him in an absolute state. It might actually have been that one, correct me if I'm wrong. But Dave Morrell left him in an absolute state. This guy is a tremendous puncher. He's very aggressive, very aggressive. And he's got pretty good technique as well. The one thing I would say is David Benavidez, I think Dave Benavidez will be able to tag Dave Morrell. I think Dave Morrell, yeah, he's a good fundamentals, big puncher. He'll look for opportunities to punch with Dave Benavidez, but I think Benavidez will have more than his fair share to be able to actually punch and counter, crucially, Dave Morrell. I think that Dave Morrell, when I look back to his last fight, it wasn't even just the fact that he looked so bad, it was the fact that he was getting tagged up a little bit in there. And I'm thinking, okay, against Hot Rod Kaladze, first fight at 175, a little bit of a lot of inexperience as a pro, but you didn't look good. You go now in there with Benavidez, if you look that laboured and that lackluster against Benavidez, you're screwed. You are screwed. So I think that Dave Morrell is going to want to be very, very careful. He's not going to want to waste any shots in there. Benavidez is going to come at him. He's going to want to try and hit him with something hard early. I think maybe one of the crucial things for Dave Morrell may be to actually put Benavidez. See, if you can dictate the pace, you're already halfway there. I think what he should try and do is not even try and feel out. Let some big shots go early on. Let Benavidez feel the power, because I do think this will probably be the biggest puncher Benavidez ever been in the ring there with. And let you then dictate the pace. Have him question things, because if you're in there with someone who's a really, really big puncher, you're hit very hard early on, you're going to stop and reflect and think, oh, okay, all right, could get away with this against Vodcek, although Vodcek had his moments. Get away with this against, Demetrius Andre, a little 154 pounder up at 168. This is altogether different. This is a big lump of a man who's every bit as big as me, who hits harder than I do, and yeah, I can't be as reckless in there against this guy. So I think Dave Morrell is going to want to let the big shots go from early on. He's been willing to do that in the past. But will the occasion, will the fact he's in there with someone as good as Benavidez, Benavidez is a very, very good fighter, will that, cause some issues? Benavidez, I think he's going to want to work his way in with the jab. I think the jab is going to be a particularly key shot for Benavidez to apply pressure on the front foot, using a good jab just to keep Dave Morrell thinking. I think is going to be a big one. I think it's going to be a big game changer for him. And Benavidez being on the big stage, he's main evented pay-per-views in the past. He's chasing Canelo Alvarez, or he was anyway. This has more implications on the winner of Beterbiev Bivol too. A lot of people have been saying that if Dmitry Bivol wins, naturally you're going to look to do the trilogy fight. Okay, well, the winner of this fight is still going to be mandatory. So what's going to happen then? It would put them in a position to either challenge the winner, or potentially, if a title gets vacant, and if it's the WBC, then I've no reason to believe it would get vacant, because what Sullivan is like. But nevertheless, there's step aside money, there's big fights, there's an incentive, and it ultimately culminate in a fight with the champion. And if they have a trilogy fight, who's to say the winner won't come out irreversibly damaged? So there's a lot riding on this fight, and I wonder, would their fight take precedence over a mandatory, over all the other mandatories? So I got to give a pick on this fight. I think that we're in for a distance fight. I don't think we're going to get a knockout. I don't think we will. I'd be surprised if we do. Well, I wouldn't be that surprised, actually, to be honest with you. But I don't think we're going to get one. Right, it's a tricky one for me, because it's a real case of, head and heart. It's a real head and heart kind of one. Heart's telling me Morrell's going to win this. But I'm going to go with Benavidez to win it on points. I think they'll give it to Benavidez. He probably will. I suspect he may very well do enough with volume to get through. But I think people are sleeping on Dave Morrell. I really do. I remember, going back a while now, when I seen him fight first, and I was like, yeah, this guy's got something to him. I like what I'm seeing with this guy, and I think he's a very, very talented fighter. And I think that it certainly, I wouldn't consider it an upset in the slightest, and I think that he has the qualities, he has the attributes to be able to win this fight. I think the only way he can really win it is probably by knockout. I think that with Benavidez, there's a lot more. Benavidez is a very, very good fighter in his own right, and I think that he'll probably get the nod on points, irrespective of whether he deserves it or not. So I'm sticking with my head on this one, and I'm going with Benavidez to win this fight on points, on a reasonably competitive, close decision. But I'm going with Benavidez to win this fight. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Before I go, I will just talk briefly on the undercard, because it's a particularly good card. You got Isaac Cruz on there. Isaac Cruz, is he not meant to be on a... Oh no, that was... do you remember they were talking about him on a Ring Magazine show? He's not. He's on here. This is his first fight since his last one. His last fight was a loss. We also have Jason Rosario versus Jesus Alejandro Ramirez Jr. Jason Rosario, I don't even think he's 30 yet. No, he's not. That was a very underwhelming run he had as a champion at 154. That's a long time ago now. He beat J-Rock, if my memory serves me correct. Brandon Figueroa, Stephen Fulton, that's a rematch. I'm going with Brandon Figueroa to win that fight. If Fulton looks like he did last time out, he's not only going to lose, he's going to get stopped. Quite frankly, he looked shocking last time out. I do believe he had some issues going on outside the ring, but nevertheless, he looked shocking last time out. So, people, that's my thoughts on this. Let me know yours in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. And until next time, people, I will leave it there. Peace.